Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. Apologies for my last live stream. My sound wasn't working correctly. You know, I got a weird set of headphones. Every time I plug them in, afterwards the sound gets all wacky. But I was talking about Tellurium. Good old TE on the periodic table. And March 21st, I just learned it this year, is Renewable Energy Awareness Day, and Tellurium is heavily used in solar panels among other renewable technologies. But right now, as I speak, it is massively undervalued. A kilogram of it, you can buy it on eBay for 120 bucks. The wholesale or spot price of it is probably even lower than that. And a lot of it goes to waste, not surprisingly, because it's very uneconomical to recycle it. And I thought, to protect that, to protect the tellurium that we do have, the best thing we could do is to all try to buy it and drive up the price so that it will be economical to recycle it. As I speak, tellurium is about 8 times rarer than gold. And all of the tellurium in the world is only a few $1 billion. And I invite you to join me this March 21st in hunt brothering the market in tellurium. Now, I actually think strategic metals will be a much better investment than precious metals in the coming years, not only because of green energy, but because of how little of it is being held by the central banks, right? If the price of gold were to go up like it did in 1980, the central banks would be massively rewarded for all the stimulus they did over the last 3 years, right? They hold some gold at least, and it basically removes all the penalty for all the stimulus that they did over the last few years, right? And just like in 1980, when gold and silver went up because they didn't hold a lot of gold and silver back then, this time around it will be the strategic metals, in my opinion. Now, how bad of an inflation do you think we're going to get? I think this is going to dwarf the 1970s. In fact, it's going to be more like Poland 1980s than it will be like the US 1970s. And here's why. As much as we keep talking about raising interest rates, we owe over 150% of our GDP, and that's only in our counted liabilities, right? In unfunded liabilities, it's probably closer to 1,000% of our GDP. And so in order to raise interest rates up, we have to erase most of this debt through inflation, right? So we're going to inflate until our debt to GDP ratio is closer to 20 or 30%, and then we can raise interest rates to wipe out the inflation, right? That's what we did in the 1970s on a much smaller scale, right? If you look at the debt to GDP ratio in the 1970s, we wiped out a bunch of debt. Don't forget, we were also spending a lot in the 1970s, right? With the Vietnam War, with social programs. In 1975, we finally started adjusting Social Security for inflation. It wasn't adjusted before, right? People used to get cuts on their Social Security, and so we were spending like crazy, and at the same time, we wiped out our debt with inflation, and then we could finally raise interest rates in 1981, right? So I'll let you do the math on that, but I suspect 10 times inflation this decade is not going to be all wacky. But I expect gold and silver to not do too well, because, again, it would massively wipe out the penalty for what the Fed's been doing, right? I recommend strategic metals, maybe platinum and palladium, maybe copper, actually, and maybe the mining stocks for gold and silver might be okay, because as the price is manipulated, we'll still recognize the value. All right, join me in buying a kilogram of tellurium, March 21st. This is the Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum bum. I gotta do that again. The Peter Dislike Show. Bum 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 bum. By the way, please show your support by disliking this video, because a video talking about buying Tellurium that has 1 million dislikes will probably encourage people to buy it.